350.
men350.org.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
For too long, American Indian tribes have faced a competitive disadvantage when litigating against powerful forces. With its American Indian law and policy practice, Robbins Kaplan, LLP, seeks to redefine excellence for high-stakes litigation in Indian country. They have worked hand in hand with tribes to implement the Tribal Law and Order Act, fighting against diminishment of tribal lands and natural resources, and improving public safety on reservations. The Robbins Kaplan American Indian Law and Policy Practice serves tribes and individuals on commercial, government investigations, agency and tribal boundary disputes, as well as personal injury. Founded and led by former United States Attorneys Brendan Johnson and Tim Purdon, their American Indian Law and Policy Practice exists to bring justice to tribal clients whose claims in the past have been dismissed or ignored due to their underdog status. If you or your tribe are facing legal issues, contact robinskaplan.com or call toll-free at 1-800-553-9910.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly cloudy skies overnight with a low around 30, Tuesday sunny with a high near 41, and Wednesday partly sunny with a high around 50. Victor's 1959 Cafe on Grand Avenue is a little piece of Cuban cuisine right in South Minneapolis. Favorites include the Ropa Vieja, sweet plantain omelet, seafood paella, and more. They're open for both indoor dining room seating and takeout orders. More at victors1959cafe.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hitting cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanjahade, which means distant thunder. My colonized name is Robert Pilot, and we discuss local and national Native news and events on here on Native Roots Radio. One of the things today, we're going to have Dr. Stately on in a little bit, but Wendy's off today, and so is Ogama. And I was just thinking, what should I talk about the first segment? We usually talk about news, and with all these people being caught by camera, killing people and being let off. I mean, all over Turtle Island here, we have, white people killing brown people, and then a young 17-year-old in Wisconsin killing 3 other people, but getting off of that. I was just thinking, we end the show, Native Roots Radio, every day, or almost every day, and that's with Free Leonard Peltier. And, I just want to discuss a little bit about that. Leonard Peltier's been in for a long, long time. They were just talking about letting go the cat that shot Reagan, tried to kill the president. And we have a Native American that's been a political prisoner in prison, federal prison, for over 40 years. And we need to free Leonard Peltier. And we're here and we talk about it, and we really want to push that idea. I know there's things happening all over Turtle Island. I know I've been reached out by AIM, and AIM is working on some things where I'll just tell you real quick. They're working on a couple things, and one of them is they're going to be doing a walk from Minnesota, Minneapolis, where American Indian movement started, to California, or to Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, I was going the wrong way. But it's Leonard Peltier's Walk for Justice, and it'll be the fall of 2021 or 2022, excuse me. It's a spiritual walk for the release of Leonard Peltier, and starts in Minneapolis, September 1st to November 14th. Of course, no drugs. Grand Governing Council will be putting this on, and that's American Indian Movement. And what I really feel strongly about this, and it looks like I have somebody mentioning they were honored to be at a free Leonard Peltier event in Rapid City this past weekend, and we should honor the treaties, this person said too. So I appreciate you reaching out and saying stuff, but he's very ill. I mean, he's still lucky to be alive. He's in his late 70s. There is a movement now, and I wanted to talk about when the big movement, we had all these documentaries and things put out in the 90s, and we were really hopeful that Clinton was going to pardon Leonard Peltier, and we were really hopeful that Obama was going to do that too. And Obama was a centrist. Obama, really supported the DAPL until there was 10,000 military people in Dakota Access Pipeline ready to do battle with the Morton County Police and all the sheriffs that were out there, and he finally did something. Obama, that is. So I'm going to play something here from the late, great John Trudell, and I want him to say it in his own words. We miss him dearly. He was a great leader. Let's listen to John.
No, they're not going to let him out, and that's never been their intention. But see, what I really think about that thing is that, see, the government had an operative, not an informant or a snitch, an operative.
Which is a whole different story.
Yeah, an informant or a snitch is somebody they grab and they get them to tell on you.
The report, yeah.
Right. An operative is someone they put amongst you to help direct activities. Mm-hmm. All right.
Illegal activities.
Yes. And see, I think that that there was a government operative amongst that level of AIM leadership, so to speak, that had access to the AIM leadership. It wasn't necessarily a part of the AIM leadership, but had access to the AIM leadership. Mm-hmm. And I think because of this operative, this operative is behind the firefight in Oglala, where the agents were killed. Mm-hmm. And I think this operative is behind the murder of Annie Mae Aquash. And the way it appears to me is that the operative manipulated both sides against each other on the firefight thing. All right, as a part of a larger plan. But the plan went wrong and the agents got killed. All right, mm-hmm. because the plan went bad. And see, and if that being the case, is that the government needs a scapegoat. They need somebody to hold, because they can never ever have this come to light. That this would have never happened if it hadn't been for the government operative playing both sides against the middle.
There are machinations
right.
in it.
All right, see, because that means, it's the way the crime laws are written. If this guy did it and somebody was killed, then he's culpable too. See, the government now is playing a role in the murder, the killing of their own agents through this operative. See, so I think that's what's at the bottom, underneath all of this.
That's why they'll never give them another trial.
They don't ever want this to come up.
Right.
All right, and I really think that that's what the deal is. So what I find interesting, and you got to be careful because it's fine lines, but all through the years, the Peltier support, defense, all this, say they've only been asking for the government to obey the law, or they've been asking for pity, they've been asking for mercy. They've been asking for things that the government is not known to do. See, so all of the emphasis and energy has been put there, telling the government you're wrong, you're breaking the law. The government knows this. They don't care. We can say about it and cry about it all we want. Practical realities. All right. But it's never been approached of, if the operative was there, if the operative was there, then this changes the whole legal dynamic in a way, all right, that alters this thing, that could be very beneficial to Leonard. So anyway, my own personal opinion is they're going to keep him there and hold him there because they don't have to do anything else. Because the energy isn't out there to get them to change this thing. But I think it's got to do with this operative thing. I really do.
That's a complete new slant on it. I've always thought that, as long as he's in prison, then there's an awful lot of people whose energies are tied up trying to get him out.
Yeah, but they're covering themselves. I mean, this has just got to be, and the same thing with what the killing of Annie Mae. Just the way the whole thing shakes down. The government, they're trying a few people here and there now and then 30 years after the fact. See, but they let enough time pass, because the operative, so I think there's an operative who's connected to the killing of Annie Mae and that gunfight that took place in Oglala. And nobody's looking. That's what I find interesting. I started to say about the Peltier. See, nobody has ever really seriously went searching to see, because I figure this operative there has to be a paper trail left behind in some kind of a way, because the operative would need to get credibility with AIM leadership. So that means the operative would have had to have done certain things in order to get that.
That was John Trudell 12 years ago. We really miss John and his wisdom and leadership. All I have to say before we end this segment is free Leonard Peltier. It's just been way too long, and we need justice. And you're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot, and we'll be back after this short break. Stay with us. Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
For too long, American Indian tribes have faced a competitive disadvantage when litigating against powerful forces. With its American Indian law and policy practice, Robbins Kaplan, LLP, seeks to redefine excellence for high-stakes litigation in Indian country. They have worked hand in hand with tribes to implement the Tribal Law and Order Act, fighting against diminishment of tribal lands and natural resources, and improving public safety on reservations. The Robbins Kaplan American Indian Law and Policy Practice serves tribes and individuals on commercial, government investigations, agency and tribal boundary disputes, as well as personal injury. Founded and led by former United States Attorneys Brendan Johnson and Tim Purdon, their American Indian Law and Policy Practice exists to bring justice to tribal clients whose claims in the past have been dismissed or ignored due to their underdog status. If you or your tribe are facing legal issues, contact robinskaplan.com or call toll-free at 1-800-553-9910.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
We are the Aleutian Nation.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, this portion is brought to you by Native Roots Trading Post down in Minneapolis. We are having a store down there where we have native art, native designs, native beading, all these great things that are native. And, you know, I tell our white allies, always ask who made this. When you go into a store, go anywhere, ask who made this, because if they can't answer that, it's appropriation and they're stealing people's designs, Native American designs. And so we're trying to fight that, and we're trying to mainstream our Native brothers and sisters all over Turtle Island at the store. So come support us. And, you know, before we get to Dr. Stately, I got a few other things, and I just wanted to read this, especially for people that are maybe too young to know what I'm talking about. Here's some quick facts about Leonard Peltier. Leonard has been an imprisoned Native American considered by Amnesty International, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, National Congress of American Indians, the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Center of Human Rights, the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Reverend Jesse Jackson, among many others, to be a political prisoner who should be immediately released. So, and he was convicted in 1975 in a shootout at Pine Ridge Indian Reservations. Mr. Peltier has been in prison for many, many, many years, over 30 years. And so that's what I was talking about before, a little bit before. But hey, we got Dr. Stately with us here, and I see him in the booth here, and I just wanted to welcome you, Dr. Stately. I was talking a little bit of Free Leonard Peltier before you came on. And, you know, it's getting to be that time again where we really need to bring that up. And I know American Indian Movement and the Grand Council is talking about doing a big walk. I know there was a letter out in June to the president to release Leonard. And so it's been, like Kathleen just put up, it's been over 45 years. Thank you, Kathleen. Do you have any comments on that? Because I know your family was involved in the beginnings of AIM, and you're still pretty plugged in there on Franklin.
Yeah, I mean, my feelings about it are that, you know, there was no, you know, according to my understanding of the evidence, there was no concrete evidence linking him specifically to the killing of the FBI agents. And I think the biggest issue is that, you know, this is an incident that happened 75, I'm challenging my math, 46 years ago. Right. You know, and it was part of a political struggle for sure. You know, and I just think that and granted, it was a different period of time, right? You know, many years ago, we were at a different point in history, and a lot of other things were going on, and we were a different nation too. But like, you know, it's kind of interesting to me that, you know, some of those guys that are directly or indirectly responsible for, I don't know, more than a handful of deaths at the insurrection on January 16th or January 6th, that those people are only getting a couple years in prison, right? And there were a number of police officers and other law enforcement people that died. It's just that I think sometimes it's like important for us to step back and look at the hypocrisy of things and how things sort of are different depending on the sort of the weight of the law and the weight of quote unquote justice, and how it's sort of meted out in that's unequal based on all kinds of circumstances. And of course, race is one of those circumstances, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was talking about that just because of these past trials this last couple weeks, and Ogama and Wendy being out of town. It's kind of just hit a nerve, and I know the Grand Governing Council reached out to me to talk about their walk that they're going to be doing from Minneapolis to Washington D.C. So It was very sobering. I played a little of John Trudell talking about it 12 years ago, the late, great John Trudell. So we should probably get into what we're going to talk about here. There is so much moving parts, new variances, closing the borders, all these things that I'd really love to talk to you about and talk to our audience about, Dr. Stately. So what have you heard on MPR? No, I'm just kidding.
I haven't heard anything on MMPR, but I know.
Oh, good one.
I actually should tell you, quite honestly, my day was crazy busy today, so I really didn't catch the COVID-19 update for today. But I would think that there haven't been substantive changes in the state of Minnesota as it goes. Like if you recall, I think last week we were talking about this, that Minnesota was first in the nation in terms of new cases, in terms of the rate of hospitalization, and a few things. And it had been for about 3 weeks at that point in time. And we might have turned the corner here a little bit. Maybe we're not first in the nation anymore, but we are definitely up there in the top 10. And a lot of that has to do with like the fact that there's just, a lot of folks who just are really resistant to getting the vaccine, right? And we do. I mean, and this is what we now see. So it's not. I hope it's not lost on anybody. If you haven't watched the news, there's this much more concerning strain of COVID-19 that is now available called Omicron. Good Lord, where do they come up with these names? I felt like I was in a a sci-fi movie. Talking about the Omnicroms.
Philip Dick book.
Right. But anyway, it is one of those things where it's just, I think the thing that's specifically concerning about this particular sort of strain of variants is that there's like 30 different mutations that are sort of like traceable back to this particular strain of the virus. And what we don't know yet is we don't know how virulent it is and how transmissible it's going to be. So that's the biggest challenge. It does look like the different mutations seem to have sort of focused a lot of their transmutations around the spike proteins on the original virus that allow those proteins are what allows it to attach to human cells and then copy themselves. That then, if those things sort of kind of, and that's actually also where the RMNA sort of technology sort of focused vaccines kind of have focused on that, sort of tripping up that transmission process around the spike proteins. And so I think there's just, we're yet to see if there's any significant concerns. I think, what I'm hearing in updates on the news, because I listen to the radio pretty much every day, all day long about the news. It's a big part of a focus of my work, but also just things I read over the weekend in between hockey games is
by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, my sons took the championship. That was a big deal. Proud daddy moment yesterday. But what looks like is, in all agreement, everybody that's sort of kind of studying this and looking at it is like, we should be concerned about it. What we should be concerned about is, how quickly and rapidly it is spreading. They were identified and typed about a week and a half ago or so in kind of South Africa, and there have been cases found already in 9 or 10 different countries. And I think I heard just this morning that there were 2 or 3 cases found in Canada, and there's already more than a handful of cases in the United States. And I think part of that is recognizing that, we are no longer like these siloed nations where we have like, these, the idea of closed borders and stuff like that is a really sexy idea, but that doesn't actually really exist. Not when we have planes traveling all over the world, flying and people landing and, all those other places and kind of moving around the world. We just are so much more connected as a globe now than we were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And we just have to recognize that one of the challenges in managing this is that by the time we actually identify these mutations and these new strains and we sort of kind of go through that process, that takes several weeks. By the time that happens, the virus has spread to thousands of people by that point in time, right?
Right. So, Dr. Stately, could you hang with us for, I think, 2 more segments because I'm all alone and I was kind of bad. Segment. Yeah, I know.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Hey, we're with Dr. Stately, and we're talking about many things here, but we're absolutely happy to have Dr. Stately on. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
If you're hurting in your relationship or have been affected by sexual violence, you're not alone. Strong Hearts Native Helpline can help you through these difficult and uncertain times. Strong Hearts Helpline is a free 24/7 confidential domestic dating and sexual violence helpline for Native Americans. Help is available by calling 1-844-762-8483 or by clicking on the Chat Now icon on strongheartshelpline.org. This message is sponsored by the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center.
Hamidakiapi, Ruben Amakiapi, Gamaza Adidi Hemie. I'm Ruben and I'm a recording artist. COVID cases are still high in Indian country. Even if you're a younger person, you're still at risk for getting COVID or spreading it to friends, family, elders, teachers, and classmates. Right now, anyone over the age of 12 is eligible for a COVID vaccine. The vaccines will protect you from severe illness and make it much less likely that you'll spread COVID to others. Plus, there's more great reasons to get vaccinated. All Minnesota teens between ages of 12 to 17 that completed their 2-dose vaccine series in 2021 are eligible to enter a drawing for a $100,000 college scholarship. And if you get vaccinated before November 30th, you're eligible to receive a $200 Visa gift card. So protect yourself and others by getting vaccinated. You may even win some cash or a college scholarship. Find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov. Get vaccinated and don't miss this great opportunity for a college scholarship. 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
For too long, American Indian tribes have faced a competitive disadvantage when litigating against powerful forces. With its American Indian law and policy practice, Robbins Kaplan, LLP, seeks to redefine excellence for high-stakes litigation in Indian country. They have worked hand in hand with tribes to implement the Tribal Law and Order Act, fighting against diminishment of tribal lands and natural resources, and improving public safety on reservations. The Robbins Kaplan American Indian Law and Policy Practice serves tribes and individuals on commercial, government investigations, agency and tribal boundary disputes, as well as personal injury. Founded and led by former United States Attorneys Brendan Johnson and Tim Purdon, their American Indian Law and Policy Practice exists to bring justice to tribal clients whose claims in the past have been dismissed or ignored due to their underdog status. If you or your tribe are facing legal issues, contact robinskaplan.com or call toll-free at 1-800-553-9910.
Hello, it's Randy Rhodes. Team Randy, glad to be a part of the lineup of Progressive Voices on AM 950. Tune in, join us weeknights at 10.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for partly cloudy skies overnight with a low around 30, Tuesday sunny with a high near 41, and Wednesday partly sunny with a high around 50. Victor's 1959 Cafe on Grand Avenue is a little piece of Cuban cuisine right in South Minneapolis. Favorites include the Ropa Vieja, sweet plantain omelet, seafood paella, and more. They're open for both indoor dining room seating and takeout orders. More at victors1959cafe.com.
Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. I'm here with Dr. Antony Stately, CEO at the Native American Community Clinic here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis. And we've been talking about a couple things here, but just we're talking a little bit about this new variant and that it's already still here, Dr. Stately.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think people are talking about this as the next wave of the surge of coronavirus, the next wave, which would make it, I think, the fourth or fifth wave globally.
Right.
You know, and I think that one of the things I think that can be really exhausting to people to sort of think, oh gosh, they're still here with us, you know. But I want to remind people that there's other things that have been pandemics, worldwide pandemics, that we have been able to sort of work together to bring under control, you know, and to be able to sort of, you know, begin to manage it like a chronic disease and to manage its transmissibility and a few other things, really deadly things like, you know, Ebola and a few other things. But, you know, HIV is an example of a worldwide global pandemic that has spread very rapidly and very quickly back in the 1980s. And, you know, we now have strategies and multiple strategies for sort of preventing it, managing it, and it's possible and actually quite likely that COVID-19 will end up being something that's of a similar type of nature, where we're living in, like, it's become an endemic, where it's like, oh, it's something that we cycle and we see come through our daily lives as human beings, you know, for the next several years, possibly a decade. And a lot of that really, quite frankly, has to do with, like, you know, our collective will and desire to sort of really do the hard work of making sure that we manage it and manage it well. And, you know, a virus only is able to transmute when it finds a new host and interacts with that person's immune system and develops new strategies, right? So
Right.
getting vaccinated and masking up and doing all of the other things that I know everybody's exhausted about. That's, you know, there's nobody, I certainly am not going to deny that everybody is not exhausted in this situation. But at this point in time, we have to sort of dig deep and find the ability to sort of continue to carry on, especially when it means like preventing the loss of lives to individuals and people that we love very closely, like our elders, our children, people who are very vulnerable. And that's who this virus will probably attack most rapidly and most vigorously, is the folks who have no vaccination whatsoever. Our best strategy still is to get vaccinated, and then to additionally, if you can, and everybody can. It's all about whether you will um, wear a mask and socially distance and exercise, you know, um, common sense, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's hard though.
Mhm.
I have a lot of thoughts, but one of the weird thoughts I have too is that the Gophers beat Wisconsin in football, and unmasked 20,000 people were on the football field celebrating, and
Mhm.
and I just look at that and go, "Wow," if I lost my mind and jumped over the fence and started celebrating, I'd have a mask on, but no one was, and I think people are exhausted, and I think people are in denial, and there's all these weird things that come
Mhm.
up because, I wear my
Well,
mask.
yeah. I mean, all human beings have the potential to fall victim to cognitive dissonance, right? So, cognitive dissonance is a sort of like a basic sort of cognitive psychological process where, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of the contrary, people will default to um, their own stance or the thing that is the most comfortable for them. They'll use all kinds of ill-defined and ill thought through logic to sort of defend their decision and their behavior, even in the face of really clear evidence to the contrary. Because to do otherwise means that they have to recognize the failure of their own decisions, right? So everybody kind of gets to that place where they're like, "Oh, gosh, I've been doing this wrong all this time. What a fool," right? Kind of thing. And like it takes a really strong-willed individual to be able to say, like, "Oh, I've been making, some terrible mistakes here. I can do things differently. I can choose to do things differently," right? And lots of people don't have. I mean, it is a very common practice. I mean, think about the same thing as like, like let's say take something that's a little less loaded, perhaps. Let's talk about like cigarette smoking or vaping, right? We all know that there's significant evidence that that will kill you over time, right? Um, but lots of people will continue to smoke and vape and do a bunch of other things, ingesting tobacco and smoking and those kinds of things. And they'll engage in cognitive dissonance behavior where they'll be like, well, I'm not dying today and I seem to be okay. And oh gosh, that could happen. That couldn't happen for another 40, 50 years, right?
Right.
That's a really simple example of like how people use sort of like all kinds of psychological defensive mechanisms to make their poor decisions and their poor health behaviors now acceptable for themselves. The problem with COVID-19 is that it's going to kill you a whole lot faster than cigarettes will.
Mhm.
It's going to
You're
kill you
right.
faster. So it's kind of like, I think that people have to sort of like begin to sort of, start to really exercise. The brain really is your biggest muscle in your body. It's the strongest and most, you know, um, elastic, right, muscle
Mhm.
in theory,
Yeah. Oh, I thought I was sitting on the the my,
You thought you were sitting on your biggest muscle?
yeah, I gotta go back to school, but yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I think for me, uh, to quit drinking or any kind of, bad habit, I needed to say that I don't know it all, and I think it's hard for people that you get enough information, you think it's this or that, whether it's what not watching news and you're getting your news from YouTube or
Yeah.
some podcaster or something and not really into the critical thinking. I mean, I'm dealing with that somewhat in our nation, and one of the things I would like you to help me with is talk about frontline workers a little bit. I really feel like frontline workers are not getting enough. I don't think the word's credit, but I feel like respect. Maybe I think frontline workers really deserve like more money, more things like that, and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, and we're burning them all out. And what do I say to somebody, Dr. Stately, that says, well, hey, our casino workers are frontline workers too, and we're not giving them, extra money. What do I say to another person that comes to me at me like that?
Well, I would say, I mean, I don't know. I might say something like, if someone were to say that to me, like, well, we're not paying our casino workers, top dollar, why would we pay a dental assistant or a medical assistant or a nurse this or a teacher that? I'd be like, well, I don't know that I would classify those individuals in the same category in terms of importance and the contribution that they're making to the overall good of society, right? Like, I mean, I'm not faulting people who want to gamble. Just a couple weeks ago when my kids were on the ice, I put $20 in the casino while they were on the ice because the rink is right next to the casino, and I walked out with $135. I was happy, but it's not going to change my life. But and I recognize I have some privilege here. But the point being is that I don't think we can't approach things from a purely sort of like black and white process,
Right.
where we think like all things can be categorized as being the same and having the same value. They're just
Mhm.
that's not accurate, right? That's not real, and it's not true.
Mhm.
What we can say is that all human life has value. That's for sure. We know that, right? And I, as an Indigenous person, I happen to think that all human life has value. All two-legged life has value. All four-legged life has value. The winged ones have value. We're related to all these creatures, and we all have a space and place in the big circle of life. There is a reason that Creator put us in this place, right, at this moment in time. And I think one of the things that we don't often stop and really reflect on and take a lot of time to think about is like how the decision I'm going to make right now at this very moment, who is it going to impact the most? And most of us operate from the perspective of like, okay, if I make this decision, how's it going to impact me? They're focused inwardly on self, right? A lot of human beings are. The majority of human beings are. And in Indigenous cultures, we ask us to turn those eyes outward, away from oneself, right? To our relatives, the two-leggeds, the wingeds, the four-leggeds, the creepy crawlies, all those things, our fellow man, our human beings, our human relatives. Our original instructions tell us to turn our eyes outward and ask us, if I do this, how is this going to impact the people who I'm all connected to? Because my life is connected to their lives, right? And the pandemic has shown that to us in very, very concrete ways, right?
Exactly.
And so
Hey,
it just takes another moment to stop and ask yourself that question.
stay with me, would you, for one last segment here?
Sure.
Could you, Doctor, please? Wendy's not here, please, but she is in New York, and she says Wendy's saying awesome job from New York. So we miss Wendy, and we'll probably have you on tomorrow. But hey, you're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm with Dr. Stately, CEO at the Native American Community Clinic, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm 8 years old, and I'm getting my COVID vaccine. If you're between 5 and 11 years old, you can get vaccinated too. Getting the jab might seem a little scary, but there is lots of good reasons to do it. You'll be protected from COVID, and you'll be less likely to spread it to people like family and friends. Have your parents find a vaccination site by calling 651-304-9986 or visit vaccineconnector.mn.gov.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
In every deliberation, we must consider that the impact of the seventh generation, great law of the Iroquois Nation. When it comes to making important decisions, indigenous people have always thought 7 generations ahead as a way to ensure our survival as people. Getting the COVID vaccine protects you and your family and future generations. Help protect the herd by getting vaccinated today. This message is brought to you by McGinsey Communications and Minnesota Department of Health.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio. This is Spirit from Reservation Dogs. Get up and listen.
You're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. I'm here with Dr. Stately. Dr. Stately is the CEO at the Native American Community Clinic here in Minneapolis, Twin Cities, Minnesota. And just give a shout out to everybody out there listening to us all over Turtle Island and Madison and all these great places. We really appreciate your support, because what we try to do here is amplify Native voices and talk about Native issues and events here. So we're here with Dr. Stately, and I think I kind of cut into what you were saying there at the end. I'd like you to see if you could just repeat that last part again, and that's where we're at right now. You were mentioning, or not.
Well, I mean, I think what I was talking about, I was trying to sort of kind of trying to make some comparisons here. We all get exhausted. Like we've been living in this pandemic now for 20 months, right? And it's been exhausting. There's been a lot of things that have probably taken its toll on us, right? It's taken a toll on our hearts. It's taken a toll on our spirits. It's taken a toll on our psychology. We have a lot of people who are struggling with all kinds of conditions and all kinds of situations as a direct or indirect result of the pandemic, right? We've seen mental health issues go skyrocket in communities where people have already been suffering from greater mental health conditions. And because of the pandemic and because of isolation and the inability to socialize and do a bunch of other things, we've seen more people become depressed and more people become anxious and more people become suicidal, right? And those things. So there's all these things that are happening as a result of the pandemic, for sure. And those things exhaust us and tire us and make us more susceptible to, when we're tired and we're weary and and we have other things that we are focusing our energy and our psychological and emotional energy on. It's easy to sort of say, okay, I'll do that tomorrow. And the more times you say that, and the more times you say, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll start this later, I'll do this later. Pretty soon, before you know it, several tomorrows have come and gone. Weeks and months of tomorrows have come and gone, and you haven't really addressed something that might be really urgent to your own well-being or the well-being of people that you love. And I think it can also be psychologically and emotionally overwhelming to sort of kind of contend with this idea of like, oh, I'm responsible for the entire, well-being of the globe, right? That's a big weight to carry. That's a big heavy weight on us, right? So what you can try to do is, when you feel that way or you have that experience, you can step back a little bit and also remember that you are a part of this big, huge web of relatives that are human and non-human that are responsible for holding this world together, right? In a good way. And all you are really responsible for is you're not responsible for the whole entire thing. You're responsible for your part. You're responsible for your footprint and the sphere of influence that your footprint has.
Mm.
And so try to keep it manageable and emotionally and psychologically and spiritually manageable by sort of like saying, okay, I'm gonna work on this piece here because that's the piece that I'm responsible for. And it plays into the rest of the structure, right? And if every single one of us functioned in that way, we'd all have healthier relationships with each other. We'd live in a healthier society where we lived on interdependence, where we took care of each other rather than independence or codependence, right? And that's the way that Creator intended us to live as human beings.
Yeah, I agree. And that's heavy and deep. I think, once I was able to get out of self, I could help other people. And I think that's one of the main reasons, if not the only reason that we're here, is to help other people. And I remember the Dalai Lama. I'll just go off on this for a second, but I remember the Dalai Lama was speaking in front of tens of thousands of people, and there was warm up bands and speakers before him, and and everyone was waiting for him, and he finally came out there, and he just basically said, "Help people." And then, almost as a second thought, walking away from the microphone, he said, "If you can't help people, don't hurt them." And that's all he said.
Yeah.
And I mean, the simplicity of
Yeah, yeah. It
helping
doesn't.
people,
Yeah,
or doing something nice for somebody and not being found out.
yeah,
Those were things that were suggested to me when I quit drinking.
yeah, yeah. It is really not any more profound than that, quite frankly. It's very simple, you know. I don't know. I'm I'm halfway to 60. I just turned 59, what feels like a couple months ago, and I'm hot on your heels, by the way, you know that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, gonna join the sexy 60s here any moment here. So, but I know that, like, I mean, I remember being, a young person and feeling like I had all the time in the world. I remember being, 20 something and 30 something and having, achieved certain things and thinking that, the achievement of my degree was a big deal and that this is a big deal and having the house is a big deal and having all these things was a big deal. I got kind of, I was living in Los Angeles, the land of opulence and, smog. Nobody pays attention to the smog, they pay attention to the opulence, right? So it's like that, but the point being is like, you get sort of distracted in your life and everybody does it. It's sort of kind of how we are as human beings. Takes intentional practice to sort of kind of pull yourself back to seeing what's most important. That's what our ceremonies are supposed to be about. Our ceremonies and our whether it's smudging in the morning or going to the lodge or to having the Sundance or any of the other things we do ceremonially. It's like it's about pulling us back together and having us focus on the thing that's the most important right here, right now, while we're on this earth, which is being a good relative to each other, right? Showing up and doing that work, making the sacrifices where we can, where it's not going to be too hard for us, and or even if it's going to be hard for us. But that's the point. The
Right.
point of it is like, amassing money, amassing prestige, amassing all these things. None of this we get to take with us, right? When we draw our last breath, none of that is going to comfort us. The things that are going to comfort us is the people that I love the most in my life going to be there to comfort me.
That's perfect and a great way to end the show. I just also think we got like 30 seconds left before I bring in the music, but I always think of it was a big self help. And of course, I was into self, so I was self centered. So I was really into self help books when I first quit drinking. But Roads Less Travels, I don't know if you remember that one, but
Mhm,
first line is life is difficult. And once you truly
mhm,
realize that life is
mhm.
difficult, it no longer matters because that's the way life's supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
When you
I've
can
been
accept that as the reality, then it's easier to manage.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dr. Stately, this show has meant so much to me. You and I being able to spend some time together, and as always, and by our feedback here, by people listening to us on YouTube and Facebook, looks like you hit another home run. So I appreciate you being on with us. And
Well, thank you. I'll give my best to Wendy. Tell her we miss her.
unless they change my name, if they're calling me doctor, you did a great job, or thank you.
You're a doctor of something. You're a doctor of communication. So.
There you go. Peony Gigging. Hey, I'd like to end with these thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Stately, for stopping in. If you're listening to the show, you are part of the resistance. From Chief Plentycoops, the ground on which we stand on is sacred ground. It is the blood of our ancestors. We need to resist, divest, join a group, and run for office. We're still here. We are the seventh generation. Free Leonard Peltier now.